I may be a bit biased, but I think cameras are really cool, and it probably doesn't surprise you to hear that I spend a lot of my time thinking about them and talking about them. And one of the things that really gets a conversation going is when I'm out on a shoot and I put my main camera down and pick up some other camera to do a specific task as another part of the production process. Because to me, cameras are like tools, in much in the same way that a craftsperson may use a hammer for hitting a nail into a wall and then go off and use a spanner for tightening some nuts. We do the same thing with cameras for what we're trying to achieve. And what I thought I would do is make a video that goes through some of the cameras that we have available to us, what they're for, why we use them, and how they get used during the production process. So here we go. So the first type of camera I'm going to talk about is this, which would probably be described as a professional camcorder, really. It's the little sibling to the big news ENG, which stands for electronic news gathering style cameras, the shoulder mounted ones that you see on TV. It's really, as I said, the little sibling to that. The thing that's unique about these cameras is that they're quite simple. They have a fixed lens, which means that the whole lens is here, it's attached to the camera, you can't take it off, which is fine for what this camera is used for. And generally cameras like this have really good zoom range, so they can be quite good for live work, live events and that kind of thing. And really, because as I said, there aren't that many interchangeable parts, or you can't replace the lens or anything, these are quite good for run and gun style filming, where you just need to be able to get out there, switch the camera on and start recording really quickly. So things like news filmmaking, documentary filmmaking, this is an ideal camera for it. But the trouble with these, and they were really popular in the corporate world not that long ago, but the trouble with them is that they don't have, well, as you can see here actually, let me see if I can make that a bit brighter, is they don't have the depth of field that you get in modern corporate filmmaking. So as you can see from the footage here, you can see all of the detail on my face, and also all of the detail of the boxes and stuff behind me. There's no blurriness or anything like that that you get from modern, more cinematic cameras. So we don't tend to use these too much anymore, but this is sort of the first thing that people think of when they think of a professional video camera. The next type of camera we're going to look at is a cinema camera, which is the sort of camera that I use for the majority of my video work these days, and we're using cinema cameras for this video, in fact. The thing with these cameras is that, as it says on the tin, the image from these is quite cinematic, and that's because the filmmaker who uses this has a lot of control over the sort of image you can get from it. So the thing that differentiates this from, say, the previous camera, first of all, you can take the lens off a camera like this, so you can replace this lens with, say, a wide-angle lens or a zoom lens or a macro lens, which lets you get close-ups of things even if it's very close proximity to the camera. The other thing as well is that inside the camera here, it's got a very big sensor, which is common for these type of cameras. And the sensor is the thing that basically converts the light that comes through into the lens into the video clip that you see when you play it back later on. And having a big sensor means that you can film in generally quite low light with these cameras, and it still looks pretty good without it looking grainy and horrible. And also as well, it means that you get lots of control over the depth of field. Now the depth of field is the thing that controls how blurry, say, your background is, which hopefully you're seeing here, is that the thing that's in focus is very crisp and sharp, and everything behind it is very blurry. So that's a very popular style at the moment. It's a very popular look for video footage, and these cameras are just really great. In addition to that, they also generally pack down quite small as well, thanks to being able to take the lens off, so being able to transport them around is really easy too. I mean, in theory, these cameras are effectively like big DSLRs, but we'll get onto that in just a second. So if you hadn't guessed already, the next type of camera I'm going to be talking about is DSLRs, or in this case specifically, it's a mirrorless camera, but everyone still calls them DSLRs anyway. Do you know what DSLR stands for? Digital Single Lens Reflex. Digital Single Lens Reflex. Now the thing that makes these cameras unique is that first and foremost, the majority of them are actually stills cameras primarily, and have a video mode built in as a secondary option. So they're very versatile. In fact, for those times when you want to shoot and a client says, hey, is it possible to get a few stills of this? these are the type of cameras that we go to because they can do that, unlike the previous two types of cameras we spoke about, which are purely video cameras only. Some of these cameras do have extra features specifically for filmmakers, like this one here is very filmmaker orientated, like with this flip out screen that you can orientate around, which is great for the old selfie vlogging style. And also as well, like the cinema cameras, they generally have quite a big sensor. So like you'll see here, I'm nice and in focus and the background's quite blurry, hopefully. And that's a nice effect and very popular. In addition, you can take the lenses off these cameras, which means you can put different lenses on, like with the cinema camera, where you can put wide-angle lenses and zoom lenses and that kind of thing on here. And a lot of the lenses that you can use with these cameras are interchangeable with the cinema cameras, which makes these a really good B camera to have in your camera bag. But they're great A cameras as well, because as I said, the image on this looks really good, and they have nice big sensors. But they're not without their limitations, which is why the bigger cinema cameras exist. For one thing, audio on these is generally really difficult. They don't have professional audio inputs, like this one here has just got a tiny little headphone jack style microphone input, which is hard to interface with professional microphones. And a lot of these cameras, excluding this one, but there are quite a few of these cameras that don't even have a headphone jack for monitoring what you're listening to, which is, you know, in the age of headphone jackless smartphones isn't too preposterous, but for professional video where you need to be monitoring the audio all the time, that's just not workable. So there are some limitations with these that means that they're not always the best cameras for your main shooting, but they have their benefits, like being able to take stills. The next category of camera I'd like to talk about is action cameras. In this case, we've got a GoPro here, and I think most people know about these because they were really popular Christmas gifts a few years ago. We don't really use ours for going skiing or like skateboarding or whatever, but we do use them for quite a few scenarios where putting a bigger camera wouldn't be possible. So if you can imagine those bigger cameras I showed you, you can't stick one of those on the back of a sports car or on a boat or like in the corner of a big like CNC machine or something where you've got to really keep it out of the way to keep on the action. The benefit of this is the fact it's so small, it's so light as well, you can mount it easily to things. Also as well, it's got a really wide fixed lens here, so you can kind of see everything. You can just stick them in a corner and they'll capture everything for the day or for a few hours or however long they run for, and they're just very useful. We started using these recently a lot for capturing reference shots when we're out filming like a conference, so we know what we're doing, what we're looking at later in the edit from our main camera, and putting one of these in the camera bag really just is no issue at all. They're very light, they're very small, and as well you can also put them on a gimbal, like a long arm that keeps it steady, and it works really well as a lightweight portable camera for like following action as it happens, and the camera quality of this is really good. This one here is 4K, which I know will probably date this video when we're on 8K or whatever later down the line, but it's really good quality. And a lot of the time when it's been color corrected and you put a little bit of sort of effects on the footage from this, most of the time you can't even tell that it was filmed with another type of camera. But they're certainly not versatile. They're for a very specific job, and that's what they get used for. So there you go. The next type of camera I want to talk about, and I'm not even sure it is a type of camera on its own, is this style of camera here. This is quite new, is that it's a gimbal and a camera all in one. Now previously, if you wanted to get really smooth gimbal shots where you'd put a camera on the gimbal, you'd have to spend ages setting it up, balancing it, making sure that the camera was really level before you even turned the gimbal on to avoid busting the motors. But a camera like this is built out of the factory, ready stabilized, so that the moment you turn it on, you're getting really smooth, steady shots. And the thing with a camera like this is that you can follow someone or follow something for ages. You could walk all the way through a building, down a corridor, across a park, and the idea is that this camera will remain steady and you'll get really smooth footage from it. The other thing with this type of camera is that, particularly on this one, you've got loads of intelligent things built in. So if I turn it round into selfie mode, you'll see that as I move, the camera's actually following me with facial detection, which is really cool. You can't do that with a static camera because it doesn't have the motorized bit built in to follow you. So this is really cool, and you'll also see as well that the picture quality is really good for a camera this small. It's picking up really fantastic 4K images that are, you know, when you've color corrected it and you've put it in with the rest of your footage, no one's going to be able to tell that it was something different. So this is really, really exciting, and it's really a mashup of what you'd get from a GoPro, also with what you'd find in a drone. Speaking of drones, now I've spoken about drones before. I've got other videos where we go into the weeds, so I won't do that here. But the reason that I bring these up is because fundamentally it is just another camera. It's another camera angle. You can take it up into the air, get some great shots from above. But the only downside with these is that despite all of the great technology that's here, such as the gimbal on the front that keeps the camera steady while you're flying, all of the intelligent stuff that actually means it can fly, and also the intelligent flying modes that mean it can kind of fly around following things without the operator having to do anything. Really, really cool technology. The difficulty with these is that the industry is so highly regulated. Using airspace is such a minefield of sort of legislation, etc., that the majority of times where you think a drone shot would look really great in this video, unfortunately, has to stay on the ground. So, yeah. The final type of camera that I want to show you is a 360 VR camera. And this is a really specialist piece of kit, and it's very cool because it creates VR video. And if you don't know what that is, basically this camera sees everything that's around it and it captures that. And later on, when you come to watch a VR video back, you can put on like a headset, look around, and it's as if you're actually there. You can do it on your phone and tablet as well, but the headset really is the way to go for watching this kind of content. This camera is incredibly cool, and the type of footage that it records is even cooler. And especially at the moment, while it's still quite emerging, there's real opportunities here for businesses who get involved and create this kind of content because it will be very unique and very different to what other people are doing. So that's a real benefit to it at the moment. There are also some other ways that you can use this kind of footage outside of 360 video and the VR experience, in that you can use this within standard filmmaking. It is a little bit tricky from a production perspective because the footage from this camera is fairly hard to work with, in the sense that like it's 8K, it's very demanding on a computer to work with it. But you can take it and manipulate it in ways that you can't take normal footage. There's a lot of freedom in post-production for how you position the footage and that kind of thing. I mean, we have a whole video on 360 VR, which is worth checking out for all the details. But my point with this basically is that this is very cool, very emerging, and very specialist, unique type of filmmaking that has its own challenges, but produces some really cool results if used well. So there you have it. That's a look at the cameras that we use and why we use them for different parts of the filmmaking process. Now, it's important to bear in mind that a tool is nothing without an operator, so don't go off and buy loads of camera gear unless you know how to use it, because your skill, experience, and just the vision behind the video you're making is what brings it to life. It's also important to bear in mind as well that we haven't even touched on sound, which in my opinion, audio is far more important than imagery when it comes to making a film. And also, we haven't spoken about editing either, because unless you have a way to take all of that footage from these different cameras and turn it into something really fantastic, you, to some degree, may as well not even be bothering. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed watching, and we'll see you again soon.